Peylin Kaya was born in 1993 in Turkey. There were 3 daughters in the family, and she was the youngest of all. All acquaintances, relatives, and friends describe the relationship of the girls as very close. The older sisters did not allow to hurt their younger one, supported each other. The relationship was no less warm with the girl's mother. Peylin followed in her father's footsteps and enrolled in Istanbul University, the Faculty of Architecture, Industry and Design. After graduation, the girl worked as a designer. Among the prosperous girl's major clients was Nike, for which she made a design in Istanbul. Later, Peylin moved for a while to the island of Malta. Here, she began to actively learn English, believing that it would help her with her career. The island was very beautiful, and Peylin had great opportunities, so she decided to stay here forever. The girl loved the city of Zero, where she lived. She successfully developed a design career here and was making good money. Her plans included building a house in Turkey for her parents, where she could meet her entire family. Unfortunately, she was never able to fulfill her dreams. Her family has always been supportive of her decision, even though they have had a hard time without her. Of course, they suggested she return, often talking to her about it, but the girl dreamed of staying in Malta. She continued to study, get better as a designer. She gathered a great team of friends and like-minded people around her, with whom she could move forward. Her positive attitude literally lured success. She graduated with a degree in English. It took her 2 years to learn the language. Everyone who was personally acquainted with Peylin described her as a very nice person to talk to. She energized everyone around her with a positive attitude. The staff with whom she was working with spoke of her with great warmth and trust. For all these people, the terrible events that followed were a real shock, not to mention Peylin's family. To celebrate her 30th birthday, on January 16th, 2023, Peylin went to restaurant with friends. There she was congratulated, company ate dinner, and waited for a cake for the birthday girl. Peylin blew out the candles, made a wish, the company tasted the delicious cake, and they all headed home. At about 1 o'clock in the morning, they parted. The girl walked alone in the direction of her home. On the way, she was supposed to meet her boyfriend and continue the birthday celebration. But unfortunately, she never made it home. As she was walking past a gas station, she was unexpectedly hit by a black BMW X6 onto Stoferat Street. The driver was driving at high speed. The girl literally was thrown in the air. She flew for at least a few meters, then fell to the concrete and lost consciousness. But the driver did not stop there. He had no intention to brake and crashed into the glass wall of the nearby KFC restaurant. Then he jumped out of the car, started picking up broken bricks, rubble and other objects from the ground, which he threw at Peylin. Despite the fact that she was unconscious, he threw rocks at her over and over again, shouting insulting remarks. There were many witnesses around who tried to stop the attacker. However, he was enraged, shouted something about wanting to be famous, and kept throwing himself at the girl, and then started throwing rocks at anyone who tried to stop him. He fought with several witnesses of the accident. People feared his attacks, but one man knocked him down with a punch. However, this did not stop the fit of rage of the man, who called himself a proud psychopath. The stranger continued to behave inappropriately and lunged at everyone around. Police was on its way. Even the officers who arrived were assaulted by him. He told one officer that he was going to be famous and be on Malta television. He was looking for reporters in the crowd with his eyes. He threatened another law enforcement officer, telling him that he remembered his face so he could find him and get revenge later. He continued to behave aggressively until the moment of apprehension. While actively attracting the attention of the public, it was only possible to calm the inappropriate driver down with a stun gun. It was difficult to determine even the sex of the victim. The body was so badly mutilated. The medics who arrived at the scene helped her. The girl was unconscious, but still alive. She was in serious condition. Not far from the scene of the tragedy was Peylin's boyfriend. He was walking by and saw the crowd and the screaming, approached the police and said he couldn't reach his girlfriend, that she had been missing for a few minutes and he was looking for her. The guy dialed her phone number again and he heard the cell phone ring, lying on the ground, not far from the bleeding body of the victim. In that moment, he realized everything and his world just collapsed. Peylin's boyfriend was also from Turkey and lived there. They had maintained a long-distance relationship the whole time and visited each other. On that day, the boyfriend had arrived in Malta just hours before the incident, specifically to celebrate the birthday of his beloved. The victim was quickly taken by ambulance, but she had lost so much blood that there was nothing the doctors could do. At 2:30 a.m., medics stated Peylin dead. The attacker was identified as a 33-year-old local resident, Jeremy Camilleri. He was under the influence of illegal substances and large quantities of alcohol at the time of the crime. Toxicology tests showed that he had such a high concentration of a mixture of alcohol and substances in his blood that it was unclear how he was even standing on his feet without support or medical attention. When questioned, Jeremy told police officers that he had consumed various illegal substances and alcohol all day. Shortly before the incident, he had been in the hospital undergoing treatment. The doctors noted that he asked a lot of questions about what was the most violent and famous crime committed in Malta. He also said he wanted to be famous and assured the staff at the hospital that he would be on television. But no one understood what he meant and had no idea what kind of danger the man posed to society. The police launched an investigation. Despite the obvious facts and numerous witnesses, it was necessary to determine the severity of the crime. To do this, investigators checked security camera footage, from which they were able to reconstruct entire day. From the morning he had been using his mother's car, in which he later killed Peylin. The security footage clearly showed him driving in one direction on the road seconds before the incident. But when he saw his future victim, he abruptly changed his trajectory and drove purposely after her to hit her. He was not driving particularly fast before the collision. Although he had broken the speed limit several times throughout the day, police revealed that he was speeding up to 80 kilometers in section where only 60 was allowed. But Jeremy Camilleri was not driving fast until he saw Peylin crossing the road. Apparently he was driving slower because he was looking around for a future victim, at which point Peylin was in the wrong place at the wrong time. Seeing the girl, Jeremy maneuvered sharply toward the victim and picked up more speed before hitting her. It was obvious that this was premeditated assault, so a charge of first-degree murder was anticipated. It was unclear why this man had attacked Peylin in the first place. Perhaps he knew her and therefore deliberately chose her as a victim. Friends, acquaintances, and witnesses were interviewed. All indications were that the victim was not acquainted with the killer. Jeremy had randomly chosen his target. Detectives became convinced that she was a random victim when they later analyzed their phones. There had never been any messages or phone calls between them. Trying to figure out the perpetrator's personality, investigators went to his home. What they saw shocked everyone. The dwelling resembled a brothel. Trash and scraps were not the worst thing that filled the house. Human excrement was smeared on the floor and walls. Rodents moved freely around the living area. In some places there were corpses of rats and mice, and there was alcohol and illegal substances everywhere. The police tried to find the killer's cell phone. It was on the bed. After checking the phone, they found only one unusual note. In the morning, Jeremy texted his girlfriend that he was a criminal and a psychopath who would become famous because of his atrocities. Neighbors and acquaintances confirmed that he bragged about his intentions to them after sending this message, but no one believed these words. The recording was later erased by the perpetrator, but police were able to recover it. Jeremy Camilleri was originally from France, and later his family moved to Malta. During the inspection, it turned out that the guy had a bad reputation in his neighborhood. Neighbors confirmed that he had an inadequate character, often had outbursts of aggression, primarily directed at his mother. Jeremy had no serious accomplishments. He didn't even work anywhere, and the car he ran over his victim belonged to his mother. The investigation revealed that he had already been in trouble with the law on several occasions, particularly for minor injuries and a minor shoplifting shortly before the incident. He was not convicted of those incidents and received probation on the pretext that it would serve as a lesson and allow him to reform. Unfortunately, such leniency led to Peylin's death. The difficulty of this investigation was not proving guilt, but rather rewriting a whole list of charges in a coherent manner. The complete list amounted to about 4 printed pages of text and included prior probation violations, driving with numerous traffic violations, aggressive driving, use of illegal substances and alcohol, and inflicting grievous bodily harm resulting in death. He violently resisted arrest, threatened police officers and witnesses, and was under the influence of alcohol and drugs. At the trial, Jeremy did not admit his guilt. He denied and demanded a psychiatric examination. The guy said that he had never received a psychiatrist before, so he asked to have his condition re-examined. However, he was refused to undergo a psychiatric examination, as the specialist considered that he was quite sane and ready to stand trial. His condition allowed him to do so. The prosecution believed that Jeremy had planned everything in advance. He had shared his plans to become famous a few days before the tragedy. This was not a momentary lunacy in this case, and the inadequacy was caused by the use of alcohol and illegal substances. However, these requests for treatment have not gone unheeded, so the prison supplies Jeremy with the medication he needs. In addition to the family of the deceased, there were many witnesses at the preliminary hearing in court, including those who suffered at the hands of the perpetrator. These included a woman who suffered a head injury at the hands of the attacker, as well as an employee of a nearby store who closed up shop and went for the hospital for treatment. It is impossible to imagine the pain felt by the family and friends of the deceased. During one of the breaks, when the perpetrator was being led out of the courtroom, Peylin's father wished him to burn in hell. And at one point, he could not contain his emotions and tried to attack Jeremy. The father was barely restrained by the rest of the family. The mother of the deceased fainted from the strain of the trial. No one present seemed to take the event lightly, except the defendant. He seemed genuinely proud of what he had done. The courtroom was packed with Peylin's family and friends who cared. More than 30 people. The staff even had to ask those in attendance who were dressed inappropriately to leave. Those who remained stood in the courtroom in 2 rows with small pictures of the dead girl attached to their clothes. Her parents had taken her body to Turkey to be buried in her homeland, but they said that Peylin genuinely loved Malta, so a piece of her soul will forever remain there with her friends and colleagues. The dangerous killer has been taken into custody. It's worth to say that the proud psychopath is no longer so proud and periodically asks for a second psychiatric evaluation. Apparently, he wants to avoid imprisonment.